"We're here tonight to protect the most vulnerable children." Those were the words of Judge Marcus Thorne, spoken directly from the stage of a charity gala in New York. The ballroom glowed with light, guests in tuxedos and evening gowns nodding along, clapping enthusiastically. Cameras flashed nonstop. Who would doubt a powerful silver-haired judge promising to save the next generation? But not every promise is made to be kept. Right beneath that stage, in the shadows, stood a quiet boy. A black kid, just 8 years old, dressed in an oversized waiter's uniform, kneeling by an electrical outlet. Not cleaning, not carrying trays. His hand was plugging in a tiny device that looked like a USB drive. "Hey, what are you doing here, kid?" A heavy hand gripped his shoulder like a vice. A security guard, big, gruff, reeking of cheap cologne that overpowered the smell of food. The boy didn't say a word. No explanations. No begging. He just looked up at the giant screen showing Thorne's face. His dark eyes gleamed with something no one in that room noticed. The resilience of someone who knew the truth. As he was led away, the boy deliberately let a small object slip to the floor. Clink! A silver tie clip, old and scratched in an unusual way. What did the audience see? Just a kid causing trouble at a fancy event. But they didn't know. He'd just dropped a cry for help. A signal meant for one person alone. Who would be sharp enough to see it? And could that silver tie clip bring down the empire the judge was so desperate to hide? New York nights are never kind, but that night was downright cruel. The storm poured down like the city owed the heavens a massive bill. Wind howled in gusts, sweeping up torn newspapers and rotting wood, swirling them around like some twisted joke. The rich stayed inside, sipping their whiskey. The poor huddled under awnings, and Arthur Sterling, real estate billionaire, was stuck in his $1 million Bentley, right in the middle of a neighborhood he'd usually scribble over on a map and circle in red. Dead land. The car's headlights flickered a weak yellow, then died. Arthur turned the key. Nothing. He cursed, slamming his hand on the steering wheel. 60 years old. A lifetime spent in an ivory tower, and he'd never been stranded like this. His phone had no signal. The car's Wi-Fi was toast. His assistant was probably dancing around in some cozy Manhattan apartment. Arthur sighed. He'd always thought money could fix anything. But money doesn't talk to rain and wind. Then came a knock on the window. At first he thought it was a beggar. Arthur flinched, instinctively locking the door. But the knocking was calm, steady, not desperate. He cracked the window just a sliver. A kid stood there, no older than 8, soaked to the bone, wearing tattered clothes with dark eyes that shone with an unusual intensity. He didn't beg or try to charm. "Your car's busted," he said, his voice firm. "No nonsense." Arthur snorted. "Thanks, Sherlock. I figured that out. It's not the battery. The carburetor's flooded. If you keep sitting here, it'll never start." Arthur turned fully, staring. A kid, in the middle of a stormy night, is throwing around words like carburetor. He let out a dry laugh. "You think you can fix a Bentley?" The kid shrugged. "I don't think, I know. Want to take a chance?" Arthur was about to wave him off, but he reconsidered. He was stranded. The rain was getting worse, and the cold was seeping into his bones. One crazy shot. "All right, little genius, show me what you got." The kid popped the hood, diving in like he'd done it 100 times. Tiny fingers, quick and nimble, unscrewed bolts, wiped parts clean, and fiddled with a few wires. Noticing Arthur's stare, he said bluntly, "My dad made me take apart old radios, learn how circuits work. He said, if you get how machines tick, no one can fool you." Arthur stood under an awning, half impressed, half skeptical. The kid didn't look like an engineer, just a boy messing with junk. But when Leo looked up, his focus was chilling. This kid wasn't playing around. 15 minutes later, Arthur tried the key again. The Bentley's engine roared to life, growling like a beast waking up. He could hardly believe his ears. Arthur stepped out, pulled out his wallet, and offered a stack of cash. "Here, payment." The kid took a single 20. "That's enough. I don't need charity." Arthur raised an eyebrow. "So what do you want?" Leo paused for a moment, then pulled something from his pocket. A silver tie clip, old and scratched with a distinct diagonal mark. "If you see this anywhere, find me," Arthur frowned. "Is this a signal?" "A favor," the kid said, then vanished into the rain as fast as the wind. Arthur stood there, stunned. A billionaire had just been turned into a debtor by an 8-year-old. And oddly, he felt like he really owed him. Arthur didn't know that the tie clip once belonged to Leo's father, a journalist who vanished mysteriously. That scratch wasn't random. It was a signal Leo and his dad used to recognize each other among lifeless objects. Now it was a code for Leo's cry for help, meant only for someone willing to listen. A week later, at the charity gala, Thorne stood on stage, preaching about saving children with honeyed words. Arthur sat at the VIP table, half listening, half bored, until he saw it at his feet. A silver tie clip. That same diagonal scratch. His heart skipped a beat. He picked it up. The kid's words echoed, "If you see this, find me." Arthur didn't hesitate. After the event, he had his people dig into it and learned Leo had been transferred to a place. The Thorne Foundation Children's Center. The building was grand, plastered with posters about nurturing hope. But the moment Arthur stepped inside, something felt off. Kids sat in rows, faces grim. No laughter, no running around, just sad, hollow eyes. He spotted Leo again. The kid was stacking books, looking unnaturally obedient. Arthur approached, keeping his voice low. "Kid, what's going on here?" Leo glanced at a security camera. His voice dropped to a whisper. "My dad said kids should grow up free like real people. But here, they're not saving us. They're using us like props." Arthur froze. "Props? For who? Could even the judge be in on this? Mr. Sterling?" A woman's voice cut in from behind. Arthur turned to see a Latina woman, tough as nails. She flashed a badge. Detective Valerie Diaz. Her eyes sized him up like they could peel away his skin. "What's your connection to this kid?" Diaz asked. "He says you're the only one he trusts." Arthur gripped the tie clip in his pocket. "I owe him a life. That stormy night my car broke down and this kid saved me. Maybe even my life." Diaz went quiet, then handed him a crumpled file. "You know about this? Over the past 5 years, dozens of kids were adopted from this center. But there's no record of where they went after that." Arthur swallowed hard. He'd never flinched in a real estate deal. But now, staring at that thin file, a chill ran down his spine. Diaz locked eyes with him. "You sure you want to get mixed up in this, Mr. Sterling? When a kid goes missing, nobody asks questions. Nobody." Arthur leaned back in his chair, staring at the cold silver tie clip in his hand. It felt like ice, like the truth he'd just swallowed. One thing was clear. That tie clip wasn't a joke. It was a cry for help. And now he was caught in a game far more dangerous than any billion-dollar deal he'd ever won. The question was, would he back out or see this debt through to the end? Arthur Sterling never liked being told what to do. He was used to giving orders, watching others sign on the dotted line of contracts he'd drawn up. But tonight, an 8-year-old kid was calling the shots through a smartwatch. And strangely enough, Arthur was listening. "The USB I plugged in got the data." Leo's voice came through, faint as a mosquito, but clear enough. "But it's encrypted. I need the decryption key. It's in the red room at the end of the hall." "Only Thorne can get in there." Arthur gripped the watch, snorting. "Sounds like a B-movie, kid. Red room? Secret key?" "He's a judge, not James Bond." Leo's reply was cool as ice. "The more powerful they are, the more they love their games. Just do what I say." Arthur gave a wry laugh. "If I get in trouble, kid, it's on you." Leo cut him off. "No. If you don't do this, more kids will suffer." An 8-year-old saying something like that? Arthur knew he'd crossed a line. He adjusted his tie and stood up. A move he'd used to command boardrooms now felt like a soldier steeling himself for battle. The plan kicked off with a crash of glass. Leo had thrown a rock through a downstairs window. The sound tore through the air, sharp as a knife. Alarms blared. Emergency lights flashed red, turning the hallway into a fiery glow. Staff scrambled, shouting in chaos, their footsteps pounding the floor like war drums. Thorne burst out of his office, furious, his robe askew, tie dangling loose. "Idiots! Lock down every floor! I'll check it myself!" His voice boomed over the alarms. He stormed off, just as Leo had predicted. Arthur waited in the hallway, playing it cool, looking like a wealthy donor visiting the facility despite the chaos. His heart was pounding, sweat beading on his neck. His mind kept screaming, "I shouldn't be here. I could have walked away that rainy night." But his feet moved forward, heavy but determined. At the end of the hall, the red door loomed. The lock looked ordinary, but the handle was ice cold, solid as a vault. Arthur swiped a keycard he'd borrowed from the front desk. Beep. The light turned green. The door swung open, silent and eerie. Arthur expected a room full of files. Instead, he found a dark space, walls lined with screens. Dozens of cameras streamed live. Kids sitting at laptops, hands neatly folded, answering questions obediently. On the other side, cold, wealthy faces asked questions. They didn't use names, just numbers. An interview? No. This was a sick game to control these kids. Arthur stood frozen, eyes wide. My God, this is a sick game. They're treating these kids like objects, lined up like stuff in a warehouse. The room smelled of cold metal, the blue glow from the screens making his skin look pale. On a desk sat a USB and a reader. Next to it, a thick black ledger, pages crammed with names, dates, and dollar amounts. Arthur's eyes scanned it and caught familiar names. Business partners, politicians, people he'd shaken hands with under glittering chandeliers. His stomach twisted. He pulled out his phone. His hands shook slightly, but he snapped photos of every page. Each click felt like thunder to him. Tucked in the ledger's edge was a loose sheet with a string of symbols and numbers. A code. He didn't know what it was, but his gut told him it was the key. Arthur snapped more photos and sent them straight to the smartwatch Leo had synced. The screen flashed. Sent. As he slipped the phone back into his pocket, the door behind him swung open. Pretty, huh? Thorne's voice rang out, steady as a hammer's strike. Arthur spun around. Thorne stood there, a cold smile on his face. Beside him was Detective Valerie Diaz. Arthur froze. Diaz? Diaz drew her gun, a sleek pistol gleaming, her voice hard as steel. "Mr. Sterling, you're under arrest for trespassing and stealing documents." Arthur forced a bitter laugh, trying to stay calm. "Documents? This is evidence of a dirty business, not some Picasso on a wall." Thorne stepped forward, his hand heavy as a clamp on Arthur's shoulder, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "Arthur, you always think you're so smart, but you missed one thing. I know every move you make. Diaz has been feeding me everything." Arthur's mind flashed back. The moment at the center when Diaz handed him that file. Too quick, too ready. Now he got it. She wasn't there to help. She was testing him. Arthur stared at Diaz. Her eyes didn't flinch. The gun stayed steady. His gut turned cold, but his mind screamed, "No way! She's a cop, supposed to protect justice. How could she side with a predator?" In a small tech room, Leo was glued to a screen. He'd hacked into the camera system. The image of Arthur, trapped between Thorne and Diaz, was crystal clear. His smartwatch buzzed softly. Leo glanced down. A photo popped up. The code sheet Arthur had just sent. Leo clutched the silver tie clip to his chest, biting his lip until it bled. "I trusted the wrong person, but at least Arthur got me the final key." In the red room, Thorne grabbed a walkie-talkie, his voice icy. "Get everything ready for tonight. That kid knows too much. Find him. Whatever it takes, grab him before dawn." Arthur glared, while Leo heard every word. Find him, instead of deal with him, meant Thorne still wanted him alive. Leo slumped into a chair, red emergency lights flashing around him. The alarms kept blaring. His body tensed, but his eyes sparked. Arthur was caught. Diaz had shown her true colors. Thorne had ordered a manhunt for him. Leo took a deep breath, his small hand gripping the tie clip. His voice was hoarse but firm. "Fine. You want a game? I'll give you a game." An 8-year-old kid, with no money, no power, but now holding the decryption key in his hands. Would his smarts and the fragments of his father's memory be enough to survive this dangerous night? Arthur was escorted out of the Red Room. Diaz followed, her gun holstered at her hip, her expression unreadable. "Move it!" she snapped, shoving him hard in the back. Arthur stumbled. "Are you Thorne's puppet or are you playing some other game?" At a corner out of the camera's sight, Diaz suddenly pinned him against the wall. Her voice was low, urgent, quiet. "He's got eyes everywhere. Did you get the decryption key? Does Leo have it?" Arthur froze, wary. "Why should I trust you?" Diaz locked eyes with him. Her tough facade cracked, revealing a deep, raw pain. Her voice turned hoarse. "5 years ago, when I was a rookie cop, there was a case. A little girl went missing in my precinct. Every lead hit a dead end. My bosses told me to drop it, said she was just a runaway." She took a shaky breath, fighting to keep her emotions in check. "They found her, but it was too late to save her. It wasn't until later that I learned the one who ordered me to stop was being protected by Judge Thorne." Her eyes blazed with rage and regret. "I owe that girl an apology, and I won't let another kid pay the price for my cowardice. I'm working with the feds, but they need ironclad evidence, and to catch Thorne in the act. If we move too soon, he'll wipe everything clean, and these kids will end up like that girl." Arthur went silent. This time he believed her. The pain in her eyes was real. That kind of regret couldn't be faked. He nodded. In the tech room, Leo heard heavy footsteps echoing down the hallway. "Search every room." He can't have gone far. He didn't have time to decrypt the full data. He needed to buy time. His original plan was to shut off the power, but he quickly realized that would knock out his own computer system too. Mistake. He needed another way. His father once said, "The best way to distract a wolf is to toss it another piece of bait." Leo studied the center's network map. His fingers flew across the keyboard, not shutting down the system but triggering a fire alarm in the West Wing, where paper records were stored. Instantly, the guards' walkie-talkies crackled. "Fire alarm in the West Wing. Sprinklers are going off. The records are getting soaked." Thorne's voice roared through. "Send a team there now. Save those records. The rest of you, keep hunting that kid." Chaos erupted. Half of Thorne's men were diverted. Leo had bought himself a few precious minutes. He plugged in the USB, starting the decryption with the key Arthur sent. The progress bar crawled. Too slow. Footsteps closed in on the tech room door. Click! The handle turned. Leo yanked the USB out, dove under the desk, and held his breath. The door swung open. A guard stepped in, sweeping a flashlight across the room. The beam grazed the desk's edge, inches from Leo's face. His heart stopped. The guard muttered, "Nothing here?" and slammed the door shut. Leo gasped for air. That was too close. He knew he couldn't stay here. He had to move, and he needed one final strike. Leo didn't fight head-on. That was suicide. He crawled through the ventilation ducts, a skill he'd picked up while surviving on the streets. His target was the central control room, where the building's announcement system was. On his way, he saw other kids being led downstairs. Their eyes were sad, lifeless. He knew he couldn't save them all, but he could give them a chance. In the control room, he plugged the USB into another computer. This time, he didn't try to upload all the data. He picked one thing, a short, clear video from the Red Room, showing the deal Arthur had seen, with audio. Then he switched on the announcement mic. Thorne was in the main lobby, barking orders at his guards. Suddenly, Leo's clear, young voice echoed through every speaker in the center. "Judge Marcus Thorne." Everyone froze. Thorne's head snapped up, his face paling. Leo's voice continued, calm but chilling. "My dad said you were a good man. You lied to him. Now you're lying to the world. But these walls have eyes, and they're gonna tell the truth." Right then, every TV screen in the center, usually displaying the Thorne Foundation logo, switched to the video from the Red Room. The scene of kids being called by numbers, the cold voices negotiating, played for every staff member and guard to see. Silence gripped the building, then shattered into horrified whispers. Even the guards looked at Thorne differently. "Grab him! Find that kid and grab him now!" Thorne bellowed, his calm facade gone. But it was too late. The sound of shattering glass rang out. "FBI!" "Nobody move!" Federal agents, led by Diaz, stormed in from every direction. They'd been waiting for this signal. The video was the undeniable evidence they needed to act. Thorne was slammed to the floor. Arthur's restraints were cut. He scanned the room for Leo. The boy stood at the end of the hallway watching quietly. When their eyes met, Leo gave a slight nod, then slipped back into the shadows, still clutching the silver tie clip. He'd won this round not with strength, but with smarts and the courage to pick the right moment, the right weapon. The night ended with the click of handcuffs. Thorne was dragged away, his face pale, still shouting, "You think you've won? No one can touch the roots." His words faded under the wail of police sirens outside. Arthur stood there, shoulders aching from being tied up, his shirt a wrinkled mess. He looked around. Kids wrapped in blankets, ushered into ambulances, their young faces dazed. Then he glanced at Leo. The boy stood tall, clutching the silver tie clip, an 8-year-old who'd just toppled a monster disguised as a judge. Arthur spoke softly, his voice rough. "Kid, you just did something most grown-ups wouldn't dare." Leo looked up, eyes bright but calm. "I just took out one screw. The whole machine's still running." Arthur was speechless. He'd never heard anyone talk about justice with such conviction, let alone from a kid. The next morning, New York exploded with news. Headlines screamed, "Powerful judge exposed. 8-year-old helps bust criminal network." TV stations showed Leo, but only caught his back. Arthur knew the kid dodged the cameras on purpose. Leo didn't want to be a child hero paraded for interviews. That evening, in a temporary hotel room, Arthur poured milk into a glass and slid it toward Leo. He cleared his throat. "Listen, kid, I can take care of you. A home, school, and the works. You don't have to keep running." Leo propped his chin on his hand, shaking his head. "I don't need a dad. I need an ally." Arthur blinked, silent for a moment. A billionaire, used to people jumping at his beck and call, was now being given terms by a kid. But he wasn't mad. He gave a wry smile. "An ally, huh? You sound like you're in a movie." Leo shrugged. "Not a movie. This is my life." A week later, the building once branded Thorne Foundation Children's Center had a new sign. Haven House, a safe home. Arthur funded it. Diaz coordinated, and Leo strutted around like a mini foreman, checking every room, every lock, as if he owned the place. Once, Arthur grumbled, "You're 8, kid. What do you know about building a center?" Leo shot back, unfazed. "I know plenty. I know fake locks, fake cameras, fake smiles. I've learned enough of those." Arthur went quiet. The kid had a point. One evening, Diaz stopped by the temporary office. She dropped a thick file on the desk, her eyes heavy. "We only took down one piece. The roots of their network are still out there." Arthur frowned. "You mean, there are others?" Diaz nodded. "A lot of them. And I can't deny it. Without Leo, we might not have had enough evidence. That kid saw what we missed." Arthur glanced at Leo, then let out a dry laugh. "My whole life, no kid ever turned me into their errand boy. Now I've got one." Leo looked up, eyes blazing. "I don't want a flag. I want a map." Diaz raised an eyebrow. "A map of what?" Leo pulled an old yellowed notebook from his backpack, its pages covered in symbols and lines. "My dad drew this. He tracked them for years before he vanished. This is just the first page." Arthur went still. Diaz took a deep breath. They both understood. This game was far from over. On Haven House's opening day, kids laughed in the courtyard. But Leo didn't smile. He sat alone on the steps, the silver tie clip dangling at his chest. Arthur sat beside him, offering a soda can. "Not happy?" Leo took a sip, then said quietly, "I'm happy, but—" "This fight's not done." Arthur started to argue, but caught the boy's eyes. They weren't a kid's eyes. They belonged to someone who'd lost too much, too soon. He let out a long sigh. "Well, at least don't forget I'm here. Not a dad, not a hero. Just an old guy with money who knows he owes you." Leo smirked. "People who owe are easier to deal with?" Arthur laughed, the first real laugh in weeks. Finally, Diaz stepped out of the office, holding a new file. She called them over. It's time to keep going. Another link in the chain just popped up. Leo sprang to his feet, voice firm. Just give me the map, and I'll find its screw. Arthur shook his head, grumbling. An 8-year-old talking like a general. Diaz gave a faint smile. Maybe he sees farther than we do. That night, as the city slept, Leo spread his father's notebook on a table. Its lines crisscrossed like a spiderweb. He picked up a pen, adding a new branch. Dad, I haven't won yet. This is just the opening move. He pressed the pen hard, drawing a circle. The desk lamp cast light on his young face, but his eyes were steely, and the question echoed in the night. Could an 8-year-old boy keep leading the fight against those even grown-ups fear? If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Toch Story, so you'll never miss the moments that move hearts and change lives.